When Isabel Lane flees an unwanted marriage into the deadly Cinder Flats, a rattlesnake's bite leads her to Kalen, a man of the desert, and a love that will defy her past. But danger still rides. Before we get into the story, comment below. Where in the world you're watching from today? The morning sun blazed over Thornwood Manor, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. Inside, 24-year-old Isabel Lane stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her auburn hair was perfectly styled, her cream-colored dress fitted to every curve, but her green eyes betrayed her true feelings: fear, anger, and determination. "Miss Isabel," called Martha, the elderly housekeeper who had raised her since her mother's death. "Your father wants to see you downstairs. Mr. Blackwell has arrived." Isabel's stomach tightened. Harold Blackwell, 52 years old, widowed twice, and owner of the largest cattle ranch in the territory. The man her father had chosen to be her husband. "Tell him I'll be down shortly," Isabel replied, her voice steadier than she felt. When Martha left, Isabel rushed to her closet and pulled out the bag she'd packed in secret. For weeks, she'd been planning her escape, ever since her father had announced the engagement without even asking her. "I'd rather die than marry that man," she whispered, changing into a simple riding outfit and tucking her savings into a hidden pocket. Downstairs, voices drifted up from her father's study. "The wedding will proceed in 2 weeks' time," said George Lane, Isabel's father. "My daughter understands her duty." Harold Blackwell's deep laugh sent chills down Isabel's spine. "She's a spirited one. I like that in a woman. Makes breaking them more satisfying." Isabel's hand flew to her mouth to stifle her gasp. That settled it. She had to leave now. Moving silently, she crept down the back stairs and slipped out to the stables. There she approached Midnight, her father's prized black stallion, the fastest horse on the property. "We're going on a little adventure," she whispered, saddling him quickly. She filled 2 canteens with water, knowing she'd have to cross Cinder Flats to reach the next town. The desert was dangerous, especially in summer, but the alternative was worse. Just as she mounted the horse, she heard shouting from the house. "She's not in her room," her father bellowed. "Check the grounds." Isabel dug her heels into Midnight's sides, and they shot off toward the east gate, away from the main road. Behind her, she heard more shouting, but she didn't look back. She couldn't afford to. The first few hours of riding passed in a blur. Isabel kept to the edges of the property, avoiding the main roads where her father's men might look for her. By midday, she reached the edge of Cinder Flats. The desert stretched before her like a golden sea, shimmering with heat. Travelers told stories about Cinder Flats, how the sun burned twice as hot there, how men had walked in and never walked out. "We can do this," she told Midnight, patting his neck. "Just a day's ride to the other side." They set off into the desert, the sun beating down mercilessly. Isabel kept her hat pulled low and rationed her water carefully. Every hour she allowed herself and Midnight small sips. It would have to last. By late afternoon, the heat had become unbearable. Sweat soaked through Isabel's clothes, and Midnight's pace had slowed considerably. "Just a little farther," she urged. Though she wasn't sure how much farther they could go, that's when she spotted a rocky outcrop, perfect for shade. She guided Midnight toward it, desperate for even a moment's relief from the sun. As they approached the rocks, everything happened at once. A sudden rattle, loud and clear. Midnight reared up in panic. Isabel, caught off guard, fell hard to the ground, and then came the pain, sharp instant like fire shooting up her leg. "No!" she screamed, seeing the rattlesnake slither away among the rocks. She scrambled to grab Midnight's reins, but the frightened horse bolted, taking her water and supplies with him. Panic washed over her. She was alone in Cinder Flats, bitten by a rattlesnake with no water. "Help!" she called out, knowing no one would hear. "Please, someone help!" The venom worked quickly. Her leg swelled, and waves of nausea crashed over her. She tried to crawl toward the rocks for shade, but her strength was fading fast. "I don't want to die," she whispered, tears cutting tracks through the dust on her face. "Not like this." As darkness began to creep into the edges of her vision, Isabel thought she saw a figure approaching. A mirage, surely. No one walked Cinder Flats willingly, but then there were hands on her, strong, steady, and dark as Riverstone. A shadow moved across her face, blocking the sun. She felt herself being turned over, her riding skirt pushed up to expose the bite on her thigh. She tried to protest, to push the stranger away, but her limbs wouldn't respond. Then came the most shocking sensation, lips on her skin just above the bite. The stranger was sucking the venom out. She tried to scream, but no sound came. The world swam before her eyes, shapes and colors blending together, and then a voice, deep, calm, and utterly certain. You'll live, but you're mine now. Those were the last words she heard before darkness claimed her. Isabel drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes she burned with fever, other times she shivered with cold. Through it all, she was aware of a presence, someone tending to her, pressing cool cloths to her forehead, lifting her head to drink bitter-tasting teas. When she finally woke, fully the sun was setting, casting the world in golden light. She was lying on a bed of soft furs in what appeared to be a shelter carved into rock. A small fire burned nearby, filling the space with warmth and the scent of herbs. "You're awake," said that same deep voice. Isabel turned her head to see a man sitting cross-legged by the fire. He was unlike any man she'd ever seen. His black hair hung past his shoulders, his skin bronzed by the sun. But it was his eyes that captured her, dark and intense, yet somehow peaceful, like the night sky. "Who are you?" she managed to ask. Her throat dry and scratchy. "Kaelin," he replied simply. "Drink this." He moved to her side with a clay cup. She tried to sit up but found her strength hadn't returned. Without asking, he slipped an arm behind her shoulders and lifted her, bringing the cup to her lips. The liquid was bitter, but not unpleasant. She drank it all, desperate to ease the dryness in her throat. "Where am I?" she asked when she finished. "My home," he said, lowering her gently back down. "In the canyon walls of Cinder Flats." "You live here in the desert?" He nodded. "The desert is only cruel to those who don't understand it." Memories of the rattlesnake came flooding back. She looked down at her leg, now wrapped in some kind of leaf poultice. "You saved me," she said, remembering the sensation of his lips on her skin. Her cheeks flushed at the thought. "Yes. Why?" she pressed. "And what did you mean when you said I'm yours now?" Kaelin's expression remained unchanged. "I saved you because the desert asked me to, and because I saw you in a dream before the snake ever came." His words made no sense to Isabel. Dreams? The desert asking for things? He must be some kind of mystic or madman. "That doesn't answer my question," she insisted. "What did you mean when you said I'm yours?" He tended the fire before answering. "The snake marked you. Among my people, the Hualapai. When the rattlesnake chooses someone and they survive, it means the spirits have plans. When I drew the venom from your blood, our fates became tied." Isabel's temper flared. "That's ridiculous. I don't belong to anyone. Not my father, not Harold Blackwell, and certainly not to a stranger in the desert." For the first time, a hint of a smile touched Kaelin's lips. "You misunderstand. It's not ownership I speak of. It's connection." Before she could argue further, exhaustion overwhelmed her. Her eyelids grew heavy, and despite her desire to keep questioning this strange man, sleep claimed her once again. The next few days passed in a blur of healing and growing strength. Kaelin tended to her without fail, changing her bandages, brewing medicinal teas and feeding her soups made from desert plants and small game. He rarely spoke unless spoken to, which irritated Isabel to no end. She was used to people, servants, suitors, friends, who filled silences with chatter. "Do you ever talk?" she asked on the third day, when she was finally able to sit up on her own. Kaelin looked up from the arrow he was making. "When there's something to say." "Well, I have plenty to say," she retorted. "Like thank you for saving my life, and also I need to leave as soon as possible." "You're not strong enough yet. I'll be the judge of that," she said, attempting to stand. Her leg immediately buckled under her, and she would have fallen if Kaelin hadn't moved with surprising speed to catch her. His hands were warm on her waist, his chest solid against her side. For a moment, they stayed like that, her breath coming, fast from the exertion, and something else she didn't want to name. "So you see," he said quietly, helping her back to the bed. "Not yet." Isabel crossed her arms, hating that he was right. "Fine, but as soon as I can walk, I'm leaving." "Where will you go?" The question caught her off guard. Where would she go? She hadn't thought beyond escape. "Somewhere my father can't find me," she finally said. "Somewhere I can be free." Kaelan nodded as if this made perfect sense to him. "The man on the horse with the fancy clothes, is that who you're running from?" Isabel stared at him. "You saw him? Harold Blackwell?" 3 days ago, a group of men came through the flats. One was dressed like Wealth. He shouted your name. Fear shot through her. "They're looking for me. My father must have sent them." She grabbed Kaelan's arm. "You can't tell them I'm here, please." He looked down at her hand on his arm, then back to her face. "I speak to no one but you and the desert." Somehow she believed him. That night, as Kaelan prepared their evening meal, rabbit stew with wild onions and cactus fruit, Isabel watched, him with new interest. "The people in the nearby settlements," she began, "they call you the one who walks the cliffs. The stagecoach drivers tell stories about you." He didn't look up from his cooking. "People fear what they don't understand. And what don't they understand about you?" He was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then, "That sometimes a man chooses solitude not because he hates people, but because he hears things they cannot." "Like what the desert asks of you," she said, half teasing. He nodded, completely serious. "Like that." After they ate, Kaelan checked her wound. The swelling had gone down considerably, and the angry red streaks that had spread from the bite were fading. "You heal quickly," he noted, applying fresh herb paste to the wound. His fingers were gentle on her skin, and despite herself, Isabel felt a shiver run through her that had nothing to do with pain. "My mother always said I was too stubborn to stay hurt for long," she replied, trying to distract herself from his touch. "Your mother was wise." "She died when I was 12, Isabel said softly. "After that, it was just my father and me. And he changed." Kaelan looked up at her, his dark eyes softening. "Loss changes all men. Some grow harder, some grow wiser. My father grew harder," she said bitterly, "and more determined to control me." As Kaelan wrapped a fresh bandage around her thigh, his fingers brushed against her skin in a way that made her breath catch. He noticed her reaction and paused, his eyes meeting hers. For a moment, something electric passed between them, a recognition, a possibility. Then he finished bandaging her leg and moved away. "You should rest. Tomorrow we'll see if you can stand." That night, Isabel lay awake long after Kaelan had fallen asleep on his mat across the fire. She watched the rise and fall of his chest, the way the firelight played across his strong features. He was nothing like the men she knew. He made no demands, asked no questions about her wealth or family connections. He simply existed, strong and certain, like the cliffs themselves. "What are you?" she whispered into the darkness, and somewhere in her heart a voice whispered back, "He's yours as you are his." The thought should have frightened her. Instead, she found herself smiling as she drifted off to sleep. Outside, the desert wind whispered, secrets only Kaelan could hear, and in its voice was a promise of things to come, of danger, of choice, of a love as vast and wild as Cinder Flats itself. A week had passed since the rattlesnake had changed Isabel's life. Her strength returned more each day, and this morning she was determined to stand on her own. The sun had barely risen when she pushed herself up from the fur bed, gripping the rock wall for support. Pain shot through her leg, but it was bearable now. Taking a deep breath, she let go of the wall one step, then another, wobbly but standing. "You're getting stronger," said Kaelan from the entrance of the shelter, startling her. He carried fresh water and what looked like cactus fruit. Isabel straightened her back, proud of her accomplishment. "Yes, I am, which means I'll be able to leave soon." Something flickered in Kaelan's eyes, but his expression remained calm. "Perhaps. But where will you go that's safe from the men who hunt you?" It was a question she'd been avoiding. Her father's reach was long and Harold Blackwell's even longer. Without money or connections, how far could she really get? I'll figure it out, she said, less confidently than she intended. Kaelan set down his gatherings. The desert is harsh to those who don't respect it. The world of men can be the same. Before she could respond, her legs began to tremble from the exertion. Kaelan was at her side instantly, his arm around her waist. Don't push too hard, he said, helping her back to the bed. Healing comes in its own time. His touch lingered longer than necessary, and Isabel found herself not wanting him to pull away. When he finally did, she felt colder somehow. Why do you live out here alone? She asked, watching as he prepared the morning meal. Don't you get lonely? Kaelan worked in silence for a moment, slicing the cactus fruit with practiced ease. I was not made for the towns. My grandfather was a medicine man. He taught me to listen to the land, to the spirits. People in the settlements don't understand that way of life. How are your family? Are they gone? Pain flashed across his face so quickly she almost missed it. Disease took them 5 winters ago, brought by settlers to our village. I'm sorry, she said softly. He nodded once, accepting her sympathy. After that I came here. The desert speaks more truth than men do. As they ate breakfast, Isabel realized how comfortable she'd become in this strange home, carved from stone. A week ago, she'd been desperate to leave. Now she found herself studying Kaelan with growing curiosity. Teach me, she said suddenly. He looked up, questioning. Teach me about the desert, how to find water, food, how to survive out here. A hint of surprise crossed his face. Why? Because if I'm going to make my own way in the world, I need to know how to take care of myself. And she hesitated. Because I want to understand what you hear when the desert speaks. Something shifted in Kaelan's expression, a warming like the first rays of sun breaking over the horizon. We start today, he said. The days that followed opened Isabel's eyes to a world she never knew existed. Kaelan taught her to find water, in places she would have walked right past. In certain cacti and depressions of rock where morning dew collected, in plants that stored moisture in their roots. The desert doesn't withhold life, he explained as he showed her how to extract water from a barrel cactus. It just asks you to work for it. He taught her to recognize edible plants, to set simple traps for rabbits, to read the sky for approaching storms. Each day her leg grew stronger, and they ventured farther from the shelter. One evening, as they returned from gathering wild herbs, Isabel spotted something moving along the distant ridge. Kaelan, she whispered, grabbing his arm. Look! 3 riders moved along the horizon, silhouetted against the setting sun. Kaelan pulled her behind a large boulder. Stay low, he instructed, his voice tense. They watched as the riders paused, seeming to survey the desert below. Even at this distance, Isabel recognized the broad shoulders and distinctive hat of Harold Blackwell. It's him, she breathed, her heart racing. He's still looking for me. Kaelan's jaw tightened. They're persistent. My father probably doubled the bounty, she said bitterly. Harold Blackwell doesn't like losing what he considers his property. They remained hidden until the riders moved on, disappearing beyond the ridge. Only then did Isabel realize she was trembling. Without a word, Kaelan took her hand in his. His palm was rough with calluses but warm and steady. The simple touch anchored her, calming her racing heart. They won't find you here, he assured her. The canyon hides us well. As they walked back to the shelter, he didn't let go of her hand and she didn't pull away. That night, as they sat by the fire, Isabel found herself opening up about her life before Cinder Flats, about growing up in Thornwood Manor, about her mother's death, about her father's gradual transformation from loving parent to controlling tyrant. After my mother died, he became obsessed with the family legacy, she explained, watching the flames dance. He needed a male heir, and since he had only me, he decided the next best thing was to marry me off to someone who could strengthen his business holdings. The man on the horse, Kaelan said. She nodded. Harold Blackwell, twice widowed, old enough to be my father, and cruel in ways that aren't always visible. She shuddered. His first wife fell down the stairs. His second died of fever. But the housekeeper told me she had bruises around her neck. Kaylin's expression darkened. And your father knows this? He doesn't care, Isabel said, her voice breaking slightly. All he sees is Blackwell's cattle empire, and what it would mean for the Lane family name to be connected to it. She looked up at Kaylin. That's why I ran. I'd rather die in the desert than live as that man's wife. You won't die in the desert, Kaylin said with quiet certainty. Not while I'm here. Something in his voice made her heart skip a beat. She looked at him across the fire, this man who had saved her life, who had cared for her without asking anything in return. Tell me about your dream, she said softly. The one where you saw me before we met. Kaylin was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. Then, I saw a woman with fire in her hair falling in the desert. A snake was coiled around her leg, but it wasn't harming her. It was marking her. And a voice told me to be ready, that she would change everything. And you believe that's me? Isabel asked, caught between skepticism and wonder. His dark eyes reflected the firelight as he looked at her. I know it is. Later that night, as they prepared for sleep, Isabel noticed Kaylin spreading his sleeping mat farther from the fire than usual. You'll be cold over there, she said. He kept his eyes on his task. It's better this way. Understanding dawned on her. He was creating distance between them, and she knew why. She'd felt it too, the growing tension, the awareness that sparked whenever they were close. What if I don't think it's better? She asked boldly. Kaylin looked up, surprise evident in his expression. You saved my life, she continued. You've shown me a world I never knew existed. You've treated me with more respect in these few weeks than any man has in my entire life. She moved closer to him, her heart pounding. When you said I was yours, I was angry because I thought you meant it like my father does, as ownership. But that's not what you meant at all, is it? Kaylin stood perfectly still, watching her approach. No. What did you mean then? She asked. Stopping just inches from him. That the spirits brought us together for a reason, he said, his voice low. That our paths were meant to cross, that something in me recognized something in you from the moment I found you. Isabel took a deep breath. I feel it too. This connection. It scares me, but not in the way Harold Blackwell scares me. It's different. Kaylin raised his hand slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. When she didn't, he gently touched her cheek. Different how? It scares me because it feels like falling, she whispered, but also like flying. His eyes darkened, and he leaned down, his lips hovering just above hers. Isabel, he breathed her name like a prayer. She closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his. The kiss was tentative at first, then grew deeper as his arms encircled her waist, pulling her against him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Isabel felt as though something fundamental had shifted in her world. I don't want to leave, she admitted, surprising herself with the truth of it. Not yet. Kaylin touched his forehead to hers. Then stay. That night, they slept side by side, her head on his chest, his arm protectively around her. For the first time since her mother's death, Isabel felt truly safe. The next morning, Kaylin took Isabel deeper into the canyon than they'd gone before. The path was narrow and winding, requiring them to climb in some places. Where are we going? She asked, carefully navigating a steep section. There's something I want to show you, he replied, offering his hand to help her up a particularly tricky part. They climbed for nearly an hour before the path opened onto a small plateau. Isabel gasped at what she saw, a pool of clear water, fed by a small waterfall cascading down the canyon wall. Around the pool grew lush plants, a stark contrast to the arid desert below. It's beautiful, she breathed. A hidden heart in the desert, Kaylin said. Few know it exists. He led her to the water's edge and knelt down. This place is sacred to my people. The water here never dries, even in the worst droughts. Isabel dipped her fingers into the cool water. Thank you for sharing it with me. Kaylin began to undress, removing his leather vest and the worn cotton shirt beneath it. Isabel's cheeks flushed as she took in his bare chest, muscled and bronzed by the sun. What are you doing? She asked, her voice higher than normal. "Swimming," he said simply. "The water heals. It will be good for your leg." He kept his pants on to her simultaneous relief and disappointment. With a graceful dive, he entered the pool, surfacing in the middle with water streaming from his long black hair. "Join me," he called. Isabel hesitated, then began to unlace her borrowed dress, one Kaelin had made for her from soft deerskin. She kept on her undergarments, a simple chemise and drawers, both now worn and faded from multiple washings. Feeling suddenly shy, she slipped into the water quickly. The coolness was a shock against her skin, but pleasant in the desert heat. Kaelin swam to her, his movements as fluid as the water itself. "How does your leg feel?" She stretched it out, surprised by how easily it moved in the water. "Better, stronger." They swam together, playful at first, splashing each other like children. But as they drew closer, the mood changed. Kaelin's hand found her waist beneath the water and he pulled her to him. "You're healing," he said, his eyes searching hers. "Soon you'll be strong enough to go wherever you choose." Isabel wrapped her arms around his neck. "What if I choose to stay? Is that what you want?" "I don't know what I want," she admitted, "except this, right now." She kissed him then, more boldly than the night before. His arms tightened around her, lifting her slightly in the water. The feeling of his skin against hers, slick with water, sent heat through her body despite the coolness of the pool. When they broke apart, Kaelin's eyes had darkened with desire, but he gently set her away from him. "We should head back," he said, his voice rough. "The sun will be high soon. Not good for traveling." Isabel nodded, though she would have gladly stayed in his arms all day. As they dressed and prepared for the journey back, she caught him watching her with an intensity that made her shiver despite the heat. That evening, as they sat outside the shelter watching the stars appear, Kaelin spoke of his people's beliefs, how each star was the spirit of an ancestor, how the wind carried messages, how the land itself was alive and aware. "My grandfather would say that nothing happens by chance," he told her. "The snake that bit you, me finding you, the bounty hunters not discovering us, all part of a larger pattern." "And what pattern is that?" she asked. He looked at her, his expression serious. "I don't know yet, but I feel it forming around us." A comfortable silence fell between them. Isabel leaned against his shoulder, and he put his arm around her, drawing her close. "If I hadn't run away," she mused, "if I hadn't been bitten by that snake, we never would have met." "The desert has its own wisdom," Kaelin said. "Sometimes what seems like danger is actually a door." Isabel thought about that. Her whole life she'd been taught to fear the unknown, to stay within the safe boundaries of proper society. But here she was, in the heart of Cinder Flats, with a man unlike any she'd ever known, feeling more alive than she ever had at Thornwood Manor. "Kaelin," she said softly, "tell me more about your people, about the Hualapai." As the night deepened, he shared stories of his childhood, of tribal celebrations, of the wisdom his grandfather had passed down to him. He spoke of the balance between all living things, of taking only what was needed and giving back to the land. "My grandfather was teaching me to be a medicine man when the sickness came," he said, pain evident in his voice. "I couldn't save them. My knowledge wasn't complete." Isabel took his hand. "That's why you saved me, isn't it? Because you couldn't save them." He looked at her, surprised by her insight. "Perhaps, but also because the moment I saw you in my dream, I knew you were important, not just to me, but to something larger." Later, as they prepared for sleep, the atmosphere between them was charged with unspoken desire. Kaelin laid out their sleeping mats side by side near the fire. "Isabel," he said, his voice low, "I won't ask for more than you're willing to give." She moved to him, placing her hands on his chest. "What if I want to give everything?" His breath caught. "Are you sure?" In answer, she kissed him, pouring all her newfound feelings into it. His arms came around her, strong and sure, and he lowered her gently onto the furs. That night, under the vast desert sky, Isabel gave herself to Kaelin completely. His touch was gentle yet passionate, his whispered words in his native tongue washing over her like a blessing. In his arms, she found a freedom she'd never known was possible, the freedom to be fully herself, desired and respected in equal measure. Afterward, lying in his embrace, she traced the contours of his face with her fingertips. "What happens now?" she asked. Kaelin kissed her forehead. "Now we follow the path the spirits have laid out for us, wherever it leads." "Together," she whispered. "Together," he affirmed. As Isabel drifted to sleep, content and secure in Kaelin's arms, she had no idea that miles away Harold Blackwell was gathering more men for a final sweep of Cinder Flats. "I don't care what it costs," he was telling them, his face hard in the lamplight of the saloon. "Find Isabel Lane and bring her to me. She's mine by right, and no one steals what belongs to Harold Blackwell." The desert wind picked up, carrying his words away into the night, and somewhere in that same wind a warning was forming, one that would reach Kaelin's ears before the hunters ever set foot in the canyon. The battle for Isabel's freedom was just beginning. Dawn broke over the canyon, painting the rocks in shades of gold and amber. Isabel woke to find Kaelin already up, standing at the entrance of their shelter with tension evident in his stance. "What's wrong?" she asked, wrapping a blanket around herself as she joined him. "Listen," he said simply. Isabel strained her ears but heard nothing unusual, just the morning birds and the soft whisper of the desert wind. "I don't hear anything," she admitted. Kaelin's jaw tightened. "The wind brings warnings. Men are coming. Many men." A chill ran through her despite the growing heat of the day. "Blackwell?" He nodded. "The desert speaks of horses, guns, and determination. They've changed their approach, no longer searching blindly. They have a purpose, a direction. How could they know where to look?" Isabel's mind raced with possibilities. "No one knows about this place." Kaelin turned to face her, his expression grave. "Someone may have seen us at the hidden pool yesterday. There are trappers who know parts of these canyons." Fear clawed at Isabel's throat. "What do we do?" "We prepare," he said, his voice steady despite the danger. "And if necessary, we fight." After a hurried breakfast, Kaelin showed Isabel a small cave deeper in the canyon, a hiding place in case they became separated. "If anything happens, come here," he instructed, showing her how certain rocks provided cover. "There's a path at the back that leads to the higher canyon. Follow it if you need to escape." "I won't leave without you," she insisted, gripping his arm. His eyes softened as he covered her hand with his own. "Isabel, promise me you'll save yourself, if it comes to that." She wanted to argue, but saw the worry in his eyes. "I promise, but it won't come to that." They spent the morning gathering supplies, water, dried meat, extra blankets, and hiding them in strategic locations. Kaelin checked his weapons, a hunting knife, a tomahawk, and an old rifle he rarely used. "I have only 12 bullets, he told her as he cleaned the gun. "We must make them count if needed." Isabel watched him work, her heart heavy. Just days ago, she'd been experiencing a happiness she never thought possible. Now, danger was closing. Then once again, "Teach me to shoot," she said suddenly. Kaelin looked up, surprised. "If they're coming for us, I want to help defend what we have," she explained. "I won't be helpless again." After a moment's consideration, he nodded. They went to a secluded area, where the canyon walls would muffle the sound, and he showed her how to hold the rifle, how to aim, how to squeeze rather than pull the trigger. Her first shot went wild, but by the fifth, she was hitting the makeshift target, a cloth tied to a cactus, with decent accuracy. "You learn quickly," Kaelin observed, a hint of pride in his voice. Isabel lowered the rifle, her expression determined. "My whole life, men have tried to control me. I'm done being controlled." Kaelin touched her face gently. "The rattlesnake chose well when it marked you." That afternoon they sat together outside their shelter, watching the canyon for any sign of intruders. The waiting was almost worse than the danger itself. Every sound made Isabel jump. Every shadow seemed like a threat. "Tell me something," she said, needing distraction. "If your grandfather was teaching you to be a medicine man, why didn't you continue that path after he was gone?" Kaelin was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the distant horizon. "The path of a medicine man is not just about healing bodies. It's about healing spirits, guiding the tribe." Without my people, I had no one to guide. He looked at her. Until now. Me? Isabel asked, surprised. The day I found you, I heard my grandfather's voice for the first time since his death. He said, "This is why you survived." Isabel's throat tightened with emotion. What do you think he meant? That saving you was my purpose, Kaylin said simply, that in helping you find your freedom, I would find my own path again. She leaned against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. I think I was meant to find you too, or rather you were meant to find me. They sat in companionable silence until the sun began to set. As darkness fell, Kaylin built only a small fire, trying to minimize signs of their presence. Should we leave? Isabel asked as they ate a simple dinner. Find somewhere else to hide? Kaylin shook his head. This is my home, the place the spirits guided me to, and the canyon offers protection. There are only a few ways in, and I know them all. But there are many of them, and only two of us, she argued. Sometimes the land itself becomes an ally, he replied cryptically. That night they made love with a desperate intensity, both aware of the danger looming but unwilling to let fear rob them of what might be their last peaceful night together. Afterward, as Isabel lay in Kaylin's arms, she whispered, "No matter what happens tomorrow, know that you've given me something no one else ever has." "What's that?" he asked, stroking her hair. "The chance to be truly myself, to be loved for who I am, not what someone wants me to be." Kaylin tightened his hold on her. "You are the strongest person I've ever known, Isabel Lane. And whatever comes, we face it together." The warning came with the first light of dawn, a flock of desert birds suddenly taking flight, their panicked calls echoing through the canyon. Kaylin was on his feet instantly. "They're here." Isabel dressed quickly, her heart pounding. "How many?" "2. Many," he said grimly, peering out at the canyon entrance. "At least 8 riders." Through a gap in the rocks, Isabel could see them, men on horseback, armed with rifles, led by the unmistakable figure of Harold Blackwell. His expensive suit was dusty from travel, but his posture radiated the same arrogance she remembered. "There!" one of the men shouted, pointing toward their shelter. "Smoke from a fire!" "Hide," Kaylin urged, pressing the rifle into her hands. "Use the path we practiced. I'll lead them away." "No," Isabel protested. "We stay together." The determination in her eyes must have convinced him, for he nodded. "Then we make our stand together, come." They retreated deeper into the canyon, finding positions among the rocks where they could see without being seen. Kaylin had prepared this spot well, with clear lines of sight to the approaching riders. "Wait until they're close," he instructed, in a low voice. "Aim for the horses first. It will create confusion." Isabel's hands trembled slightly as she raised the rifle, but she steadied herself. This was no longer just about her freedom. It was about defending the life and love she'd found with Kaylin. The riders approached cautiously, spread out across the canyon floor. Harold Blackwell remained slightly behind the others, letting his hired guns take the risks. "Coward," Isabel muttered. When the men were about 50 yards away, Kaylin signaled. They fired together, 2 shots that echoed through the canyon. 2 horses went down, throwing their riders into the dust. Chaos erupted. The remaining riders scattered for cover, returning fire blindly toward the rocks. Bullets pinged off stone around them, but their position held strong. "Whoever's up there," Harold Blackwell's voice boomed, "I want Isabel Lane. She's my property by right of contract. Hand her over, and you can walk away." Fury washed over Isabel. "I am no one's property," she shouted back. There was a moment of silence, then Blackwell's laugh. "Isabel, so it is you up there. Come down now, girl. Your father's beside himself with worry. This little adventure of yours has gone on long enough." "My father just wants his business deal," she called back. "And you just want a wife you can break. I'm not coming back, not ever." More gunfire erupted, forcing them to duck behind the rocks. Kaylin pointed to a narrow path that wound behind their position. "They're trying to flank us," he whispered. "We need to move." They retreated further up the canyon, finding a new position, with good coverage. The gunfire had stopped, replaced by the sound of men shouting to each other as they coordinated their approach. "We can't hold them off forever," Isabel said, counting the bullets they had left. We're down to 7 shots. Kaylin's expression was calm despite the danger. We don't need to hold them forever, just long enough. Long enough for what? He looked up at the sky. The desert protects its own. Isabel followed his gaze but saw nothing unusual, just the clear blue sky of early morning. What was he waiting for? The answer came within the hour. As the hunters pressed their attack, working their way up the canyon in a coordinated effort, a change came over the air. The wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of dust and electricity. "What's happening?" Isabel asked, noticing how the light had shifted, taking on a strange yellowish hue. Kaylin's smile was grim but satisfied. "A dust storm. A big one, judging by the signs. The canyon will become a dangerous place very soon." Even as he spoke, the wind grew stronger. In the distance, a wall of dust was visible, rolling toward them like a massive wave. "We need to get back to the shelter," Kaylin said, urgently. "Now." They abandoned their defensive position, moving quickly along a path Isabel hadn't noticed before. A natural ledge that ran above the canyon floor, providing a route back to their home. Below them, the hunters had also spotted the approaching storm. Confusion broke out as some men argued for pressing the attack while others wanted to retreat. "It's just a bit of dust," they heard Blackwell snap. "Find her." But the dust storm was no minor thing. When it hit with the force of nature's fury. Visibility dropped to nearly nothing in seconds. The air filled with stinging particles, making it impossible to see or breathe properly without protection. Kaylin and Isabel reached their shelter just as the worst of the storm engulfed the canyon. They sealed the entrance with a heavy hide, but still fine dust found its way in through every crack. "What about them?" Isabel asked, thinking of the men caught in the open. "If they're smart, they'll have found cover," Kaylin replied, though his tone suggested he didn't much care either way. "The storm will last for hours. They'll have to retreat or risk being buried alive." Isabel felt a strange mix of relief and tension. The dust storm had saved them for now, but what would happen when it passed? Would Blackwell give up and leave, or would his pride push him to continue the hunt? They waited out the storm in their shelter, drinking sparingly from their water supply and speaking little. The constant howl of the wind and the oppressive darkness created a sense of being cut off from the world. "Is this what you meant?" Isabel asked after a long silence. "When you said the desert protects its own?" Kaylin nodded. "I felt it coming this morning. The signs were there for those who know how to read them." "And you think it came to protect us?" "I think the spirits speak through the land," he said, "and they have decided your story is not yet finished." When the storm finally passed, late in the afternoon, they emerged cautiously. The canyon was transformed. Drifts of sand covered familiar landmarks, and the air remained hazy with suspended dust. No sign remained of Blackwell or his men. "They're gone," Isabel said, hardly daring to believe it. "The storm drove them away." Kaylin surveyed the canyon with narrowed eyes. "For now. But men like Blackwell don't give up easily, especially when their pride is hurt." They spent the rest of the day cleaning their shelter and checking their supplies. The storm had contaminated some of their water and food, but they had enough, hidden in the caves, to manage. As night fell, they sat outside beneath a sky washed clean by the wind. The stars seemed brighter than ever, a vast canopy of light above the desert. "What do we do now?" Isabel asked, leaning against Kaylin's shoulder. He was quiet for a moment, considering. "We have choices. We can stay and prepare for when they return, or we can leave, find somewhere new, somewhere they won't think to look." "Leave your home?" she asked, knowing what the canyon meant to him. "Home is not always a place," he said. Looking at her with such tenderness it made her heart ache. "Sometimes it's a person." Isabel kissed him softly. "Wherever we go together." That night, as they lay together beneath the firs, planning their future in whispered conversations, neither of them noticed the solitary figure watching from the distant ridge. A man whose expensive suit was now tattered and dust-covered, whose face was set in lines of cold fury. Harold Blackwell had sent his men back to town, but he himself had stayed, sheltering in a cave during the worst of the storm. And now he had found what he was looking for: the key, hidden canyon where Isabel was hiding. More importantly, he had seen who she was with. An Indian. He spat the word like poison. "So that's how it is." In the growing darkness, he checked his revolver, still clean despite the dust, still loaded with 5 bullets. 5 was more than enough. Tomorrow, he would reclaim what was his, and the savage who had dared touch his property would pay with his life. Morning dawned clear and bright, with no hint of the previous day's storm except for the newly shaped landscape. Isabel woke early, filled with a sense of purpose. If they were going to leave, they needed to prepare properly. She found Kaelin already outside, collecting the last of their scattered belongings that had been blown about by the wind. "We should leave today," he said when he saw her. "The storm has covered our tracks, and it will be harder for them to find us again if we go now." Isabel nodded, though a part of her was sad to leave this place where she had found both love and freedom. "Where will we go?" "North to the mountains," Kaelin replied. "I have friends among the tribes there. We'll be safe until we decide on our next step." They packed quickly, taking only what they could carry comfortably. Kaelin had taught her well. She now knew that traveling light in the desert was not just practical, but sometimes the difference between life and death. As Isabel rolled up the sleeping furs, something caught her eye, a small pouch Kaelin kept near his bedroll. It had fallen open, revealing a carved wooden token inside. Curious, she picked it up. The token depicted 2 snakes entwined together, their bodies forming an endless circle. The craftsmanship was exquisite, with tiny scales etched into the wood, and eyes made from some kind of dark stone. "What's this?" she asked when Kaelin returned. He looked at the token in her hand, and a strange expression crossed his face, part surprise, part something that looked almost like destiny fulfilled. "It was my grandfather's," he said, taking it from her gently. "Her symbol of 2 souls bound together. He gave it to me before he died and told me I would know when it was time to pass it on." Isabel's heart quickened. "And is it time?" Before Kaelin could answer, a voice came from the entrance of their shelter, cold, familiar, and filled with menace. How touching! They both whirled around. Harold Blackwell stood there, his revolver pointed steadily at Kaelin's chest. His once fine clothes were filthy, his face scratched and sunburned, but his eyes burned with the same cold arrogance Isabel remembered. "Step away from him, Isabel," Blackwell ordered. "It's time to go home." Fear and rage warred within her. "This is my home. Now." Blackwell's laugh was ugly. "With this savage? I knew you were willful, but I didn't take you for a fool." His eyes narrowed. "I've spent good money and time tracking you down. Your father's patience is at an end, as is mine." "My father has no say in my life anymore," Isabel said, standing her ground. "And neither do you." "Oh, but I do," Blackwell smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. "We have a contract, your father and I, you're mine, bought and paid for, and no desert rat is going to change that." Kaelin had remained silent, his posture tense but controlled. Now he spoke, his voice calm despite the gun pointed at him. "She belongs to no one but herself." Blackwell's face twisted with disgust. "Indians, and their noble speeches, always good for a laugh." He gestured with the gun. "Step aside or I'll shoot you where you stand." "No." Isabel moved to stand in front of Kaelin. "If you want to shoot him, you'll have to shoot me first." Blackwell's finger tightened on the trigger. "Don't tempt me, girl. I can always tell your father it was an accident, that this savage here killed you when I tried to rescue you." The moment hung suspended in time, Blackwell with his gun, Isabel standing defiant, Kaelin tense and ready behind her. The carved token still lay in his hand, the 2 snakes seeming to move in the shifting light. What happened next occurred so quickly that later Isabel would struggle to remember the exact sequence. Blackwell's attention shifted for just a second, his eyes moving to something behind them. In that instant, Kaelin moved, shoving Isabel to the side and lunging forward. A shot rang out, deafening in the confined space. Isabel screamed, certain that Kaelin had been hit. But it was Blackwell who staggered backward, a look of shock on his face, blood blossoming on his shoulder. Standing in the entrance behind him was a figure Isabel never expected to see. Martha, the elderly housekeeper from Thornwood Manor, holding a small pistol with surprising steadiness. "That's quite enough, mister." "Blackwell," Martha said, her usually gentle voice hard as steel. "Step away from my girl." Blackwell's face contorted with rage and pain. You interfering old... Careful, Martha warned, the pistol never wavering. I aimed for your shoulder on purpose. The next one goes somewhere more vital. Kaelan moved quickly, disarming Blackwell and binding his wound with practiced efficiency. The older man cursed and threatened, but with Martha's gun still trained on him, he could do little else. Martha, Isabel said, still stunned by her appearance. How did you find us? The older woman's face softened. I've been tracking you since you left, child. Your father sent out his search parties, but I followed my own path. I know you better than they do. But why? Isabel asked, moving to embrace the woman who had been more of a mother to her than anyone since her own had died. Because I promised your mother I'd protect you, Martha said simply. And letting you marry this monster was breaking that promise. Blackwell spat at Martha's feet. You'll hang for this, old woman, and you, he glared at Kaelan. They'll do worse to you for taking what's mine. He didn't take me, Isabel said firmly. I chose him, just as I choose now to never return to Thornwood Manor or my father's control. Martha nodded, a small smile on her weathered face. Your mother would be proud. She always said you had her spirit. As they bound Blackwell securely, Isabel noticed Kaelan looking at Martha with newfound respect. You tracked us through Cinder Flats? He asked. Few can do that, Martha chuckled. I wasn't always a housekeeper, young man. My father was a scout for the army, and he taught his daughters well. The mention of the army made Kaelan tense, but Martha shook her head. Don't worry. I left that life behind long ago, when I saw what they did to your people. I'm no threat to you. With Blackwell secured, they sat outside the shelter making new plans. The mountains were still their destination, but now with Martha joining them, at least for part of the journey. What about him? Isabel asked, nodding, toward Blackwell, who glared at them from where he was tied. We'll leave him at the trading post on our way north, Kaelan decided. With enough water to survive, but not enough freedom to follow us immediately. As the sun began to set on this unexpected day, Kaelan took Isabel's hand and led her a short distance away for privacy. I never answered your question, he said, taking out the carved token once more. About whether it was time. Isabel's heart raced as he held out the wooden snakes to her. This mark, he said, gently touching the scar on her leg where the rattlesnake had bitten her, was the beginning. Now it's time we write the rest. He held the token between them, its meaning clear in his eyes. If I gave you this, would you choose to stay, not because I saved you, but because you want to be mine as I am yours? Isabel looked at him, this man who had taught her what real freedom meant. Not the absence of connection, but the right to choose who to connect with. She smiled, feeling truly free for the first time in her life. Yes, she whispered, in every way that matters. As he placed the token in her palm and closed her fingers around it, they both knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, her father's anger, society's judgment, the harsh realities of their world, they would face them together. Behind them, the desert wind picked up, carrying their promise to the spirits that watched over Cinder Flats. And somewhere in that wind, Kaelan heard his grandfather's voice one last time. Now you understand. This is why you survived. The journey to the northern mountains began at dawn. Isabel, Kaelan, and Martha traveled on foot, leading a reluctant Harold Blackwell on a borrowed horse. His hands were bound to the saddle horn, his wounded shoulder bandaged but still causing him obvious pain. This is kidnapping, he snarled as they set out across the desert. You'll all hang for this. Be quiet, Mr. Blackwell, Martha said calmly, or I'll gag you as well. Isabel couldn't help but smile at the older woman's strength. All those years at Thornwood Manor, she'd thought of Martha as just a housekeeper. Now, she realized there was so much more to the woman who had raised her. How did you really find us? Isabel asked as they walked side by side, Kaelan scouting ahead to ensure their path was clear. Martha's weathered face softened. When you disappeared, your father sent men in every direction. But I remembered how you used to talk about Cinder Flats when you were a child, how the stories fascinated you. I don't remember that, Isabel said, surprised. You were very young. Your mother would tell you tales of the desert, of the spirits that lived there. She always said you had desert in your blood. Martha smiled at the memory. So when you ran, I suspected where you might go. But how did you track us to the canyon? I followed Blackwell, Martha admitted. He's not as clever as he thinks. I knew he'd eventually find you, so I just had to stay far enough behind that. He wouldn't notice me. Isabel shook her head in amazement. All this time I never knew what you were capable of. Women like me, we learn to hide our strengths, Martha said. It's safer that way, especially in a house like your father's. The mention of her father brought a shadow to Isabel's face. He won't stop looking for me, will he? Not easily, Martha agreed. George Lane doesn't like losing what he considers his. The wooden token hung from a leather cord around Isabel's neck, resting against her heart. She touched it, drawing strength from what it represented. Her choice, her freedom, her bond with Kaylin. I'm not his to lose anymore, she said firmly. They reached the trading post by midday, a small rough-hewn building at the edge of Cinder Flats, where trappers and prospectors sometimes stopped for supplies. The owner, a grizzled man named Jenkins, raised his eyebrows at their unusual party, but asked no questions when Kaylin paid him in silver to keep Blackwell for 3 days before releasing him. He's hurt, but not badly, Kaylin explained as they secured Blackwell to a post inside the trading post's back room. Make sure he has water and food. What if I decide to let him go early? Jenkins asked, pocketing the silver. Martha stepped forward, her small pistol appearing in her hand as if by magic. Then I'd suggest you leave this territory entirely, Mr. Jenkins, because I never forget a face or a betrayal. The trader's eyes widened. 3 days it is, ma'am. As they prepared to leave, Blackwell made one final attempt to sway Isabel. Think about what you're doing, girl, he said, his voice suddenly gentle, cajoling. Your father's not a young man. This disappointment might kill him. Is that what you want, to have his death on your conscience? Isabel approached him, keeping just out of his reach. My father stopped caring about my happiness the day my mother died. All he's cared about since. Then is his business and his legacy. He loves you in his way, Blackwell insisted. Come back with me. I'll treat you well, give you a fine house, servants. You'll want for nothing. Except love, Isabel replied. Except respect and freedom. Blackwell's face hardened. Love? From an Indian? You're more foolish than I thought. When he tires of you, when his people reject you, you'll have nothing. Kaylin stepped forward, his presence calm but commanding. Among my people, a man's word is his bond. I have pledged myself to Isabel, and that pledge does not break. Can you say the same of your promises, Blackwell? The older man had no answer. For that. As they left the trading post, Isabel felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Blackwell was temporarily contained, and they had a head start toward their new life. He'll come after us again, she said to Kaylin as they headed north. Yes, he agreed. But by then we'll be beyond his reach. Martha walked alongside them until they reached a fork in the trail late that afternoon. There she stopped and set down her small pack. This is where we part ways, she announced. Isabel stared at her in shock. What? I thought you were coming. With us, Martha shook her head. My place is back at Thornwood Manor. But Blackwell will tell my father you helped us. You'll be in danger, the older woman smiled. Your father won't believe anything Blackwell says about me. I've been in that house for 30 years. Besides, her eyes twinkled with mischief. I never showed my face to Blackwell at the canyon. As far as he knows, I'm just a shadow with a gun. Isabel embraced the woman who had been her surrogate mother for so long. I can't bear to think I'll never see you again. Oh, you will, Martha assured her. I'm getting too old for housekeeping anyway. Once I've settled a few matters at Thornwood, I might just find myself heading north as well. Kaylin approached Martha, with respect in his eyes. You are welcome among my friends, Elder. Martha nodded, accepting the title with dignity. Take care of her, she said. She has her mother's heart, brave but tender. With my life, Kaylin promised. They watched as Martha headed back toward the trading post, planning to catch a stage from there back to town. Her small figure remained straight and proud, even after all she'd been through. Will she really be safe? Isabel asked worriedly. She is stronger than she appears, Kaylin said, and wiser. I think your father will find her more formidable than he expects. For 3 days, they traveled north through changing landscapes. The harsh desert gradually gave way to scrubland, then to rolling hills covered with juniper and pine. The air grew cooler, the nights crisp under star-filled skies. Each evening they made camp together, sharing stories of their vastly different lives. Isabel told Kaelin about growing up in Thornwood Manor, about the books she'd read in secret, about her dreams of seeing the world beyond her father's property. In turn, Kaelin shared more about his childhood among the Hualapai, about the traditions and beliefs that had shaped him, about the loss of his family, and his journey to find himself again. "My grandfather believed that each person has a spirit path," he explained one night as they sat beside their campfire. "Sometimes we stray from it, lost in grief or anger, but the spirits always provide a way back." "Was I your way back?" Isabel asked, leaning against his shoulder. He touched the token around her neck. "We were each other's way back." The snake knew. On the fourth day, they reached the foothills of the mountains. The land rose dramatically before them, peaks disappearing into clouds. Here the world felt different, older, wilder, more alive. "We're close now," Kaelin said. "My friends live in a hidden valley about half a day's journey from here." "What? Are they like these friends of yours?" Isabel asked, suddenly nervous about meeting people who were important to Kaelin. "They are outcasts like me," he explained. "Some are from my tribe, others from different peoples. They have created a place where old ways are honored, but where there is room for new beginnings as well." As they climbed higher into the mountains, following a trail only Kaelin could see, Isabel found herself thinking about the future, their future. What would her life be like now? Who would she become away from the constraints of her father's world? "Are you afraid?" Kaelin asked, noticing her thoughtful silence. "A little," she admitted. "Everything is changing so fast." He took her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "Change is like the river. We cannot stop it, only learn to move with it." By late afternoon, they reached a narrow pass between two towering cliffs. On the other side, a valley opened up, green and sheltered, with a small stream running through its center. Smoke rose from several dwellings, some traditional wickiups, others simple cabins built in the white man's style. "Welcome to Raven's Valley," Kaelin said. As they descended into the valley, people began to emerge from the dwellings. Men, women, and children of different tribes, some mixed with white blood, all watching the newcomers with curious eyes. An elderly man stepped forward from the group. His face was deeply lined, his long white hair braided with feathers and beads. Despite his age, he stood straight and proud. "Shadow Walker," he greeted Kaelin in English, using what Isabel assumed was Kaelin's tribal name. "You have been gone many moons." "Elder Swift Fox," Kaelin replied respectfully. "The desert called me, but now I return." The old man's eyes shifted to Isabel. "And you bring a daughter of the white man with you." Isabel felt a moment of panic. Would these people reject her? Would they resent her presence in their sanctuary? But then Kaelin held up their joined hands. "I bring the woman who bears the snake's mark, the one I saw in my dream." Swift Fox studied Isabel intently, his dark eyes seeming to look into her very soul. Then, to her surprise, he smiled. "Yes," he said, "I see it now. The spirits speak true." He extended his hand to her. "Welcome, Snake Woman, our home is yours." Relief washed over Isabel as she took the elder's hand. Behind him, the other villagers relaxed, some smiling, others nodding in acceptance. That evening, a feast was prepared to welcome them. As they sat around a large central fire, eating unfamiliar but delicious foods, Isabel was struck by the sense of community that surrounded them. Children played freely, elders told stories, couples leaned against each other in comfortable companionship. It was nothing like the formal dinners at Thornwood Manor, where conversation was stilted and relationships were based on social position rather than genuine connection. "Do you like it here?" Kaelin asked quietly, watching her take it all in. "It's beautiful," she said honestly. "Everyone seems so free." He nodded. "Here, each person is valued for who they are, not for what others wish them to be." Later, they were shown to a small cabin at the edge of the village, a place Swift Fox explained that had been waiting for Kaelin's return. "The spirits told us you would not return alone," the elder said before leaving them. "Now we understand why." Inside, the cabin was simple but comfortable, with a stone fireplace, a bed covered in soft furs, and windows that looked out onto the mountains. "This will be our home?" Isabel asked, turning in a circle to take it all in. "If you wish it to be," Kaelin replied. "We can stay here or we can go elsewhere. The choice is yours as much as mine." Isabel went to him, wrapping her arms around his waist and resting her head against his chest. "I think I could be happy here with you." He held her close, his heartbeat steady under her ear. "Then we stay for as long as it feels right." That night in their new home, they made love with a sense of permanence that hadn't existed before. This wasn't a shelter in the desert, temporary and precarious. This was a beginning, a foundation, for the life they would build together. Spring turned to summer, and Isabel adapted to life in Ravens Valley more easily than she'd expected. The women of the village taught her to weave baskets, to prepare traditional foods, to identify healing plants. In return, she taught some of the children to read and write English, skills that Swift Fox recognized would be valuable for their future. Kaelin, too, found his place again. His knowledge of medicine, passed down from his grandfather, made him an important member of the community. Together with Swift Fox, he treated the sick and injured, combining traditional remedies with what he had learned during his time in the outside world. One evening, as they sat outside their cabin watching the sunset paint the mountains gold, Isabel realized with surprise that she hadn't thought about her old life in days. Thornwood Manor, her father, even Harold Blackwell, they all seemed like characters from a story she'd once read rather than people who had controlled her reality. "What are you thinking?" Kaelin asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "That. I'm happy," she said simply. "Happier than I ever knew was possible." He took her hand, raising it to his lips in a gesture that still made her heart flutter. The snake chose well when it marked you. But their peace was not destined to last unchallenged. Late one summer afternoon, a scout from the village returned. With troubling news, strangers were approaching the valley, white men on horseback led by someone who matched Harold Blackwell's description. "How did he find us?" Isabel asked, fear clutching at her heart. "We're so far from Cinder Flats." "Men like Blackwell have resources," Kaelin said grimly. "And determination." Swift Fox called a council to decide how to respond to the threat. As the elders and warriors gathered, Isabel was surprised to find herself invited to join them, an honor not usually extended to newcomers. "The Snake Woman has earned her place among us," Swift Fox explained when she hesitated. "And these men come for her. Her voice should be heard." Different options were discussed, meeting the intruders with force, hiding in the higher mountains until they left, trying to negotiate. Some of the younger men argued for immediate action, while the elders counseled caution. "They have guns," one woman pointed out, "and the government behind them. If we harm white men, soldiers will come." It was a sobering reminder of the reality they lived in. Even here in this hidden valley, the outside world's rules still held power. Finally, Isabel stood. "These men are here because of me. Let me face them." A murmur ran through the circle. Kaelin looked at her with concern. "It's too dangerous." "Blackwell won't leave without you." "I know," she said steadily, "but I won't hide while others fight my battles, not anymore." After much debate, a plan was formed. They would not run, nor would they attack. Instead, they would meet the intruders at the entrance to the valley, a narrow pass that could be easily defended if necessary. That night, as they prepared for the confrontation to come, Isabel and Kaelin held each other close in their cabin. "Are you afraid?" he asked, his fingers tracing the curve of her face as if memorizing it. "Yes," she admitted, "but not of Blackwell. I'm afraid of losing this, losing us." "That will never happen," Kaelin promised. "Whatever comes tomorrow, we face it together." She touched the token that still hung around her neck. "Two snakes entwined forever." "Forever," he echoed. Dawn broke clear and bright over the mountains. Isabel dressed carefully in a buckskin dress the women had made for her, braiding her auburn hair in the style she had learned from them. Around her neck, the wooden token rested against her skin. Kaelin watched her with pride in his eyes. "You look like you belong here now." I do belong here, she said with certainty. With you. They joined the others at the pass, Swift Fox and the elders, several of the younger warriors armed but restrained. Together they waited as the sound of approaching horses grew louder. When the riders appeared around the bend in the trail, Isabel counted 6 men. Harold Blackwell rode at their head, his face set in lines of grim determination. Beside him was a figure that made Isabel's blood run cold. Her father, George Lane. "Father," she whispered, not having expected to see him here. Kaelin squeezed her hand. "Be strong." The riders stopped a short distance away, taking in the group that blocked their path. Blackwell's hand moved to his gun belt, but George Lane restrained him with a gesture. "Isabel," her father called, his voice carrying across the space between them. "Thank God we found you." She stepped forward, her head held high. "I wasn't lost, Father. I chose to leave." George Lane's face hardened. "With an Indian, have you lost your mind, girl? Do you know what people are saying back home?" "I don't care what they're saying," she replied. "And his name is Kaelin. He saved my life when the rattlesnake bit me." Blackwell sneered. "Saved you? He kidnapped you, kept you from your rightful place, from the marriage your father arranged." "A marriage I never agreed to," Isabel shot back. "I ran away before I ever met Kaelin. I chose this life, this place, these people." Her father dismounted, approaching her slowly. He looked older than she remembered, the lines in his face deeper, his hair grayer. "Isabel, please," he said, his voice softer now. "Come home. We can discuss the engagement. Perhaps we can find another arrangement that suits you better." For a moment, Isabel felt a pang of sympathy for her father. Despite everything, he was still the man who had once bounced her on his knee, who had taught her to ride her first pony. "It's too late for that," she said gently. "I've made my choice. I'm staying here with Kaelin." Blackwell spat on the ground. "This is absurd. She's under some kind of spell or influence. George, we should just take her and be done with it." He started to dismount, his hand going to his gun again. Immediately, the tension escalated. The warriors stepped forward, hands on their weapons. Blackwell's men reached for their rifles. "Stop!" A new voice rang out, firm and authoritative. Everyone turned in surprise. Coming up the trail behind Blackwell and his men was Martha, riding, a sturdy mountain pony, looking as composed as if she was still managing Thornwood Manor. "Martha." George Lane stared at his housekeeper in confusion. "What are you doing here?" "Preventing bloodshed, I hope," she said, dismounting and walking through the group of men to stand beside Isabel. "Hello, child. I told you we'd meet again." Isabel embraced her, tears of joy and relief springing to her eyes. "You came." "Of course I did," Martha replied. "As soon as I heard George and Blackwell plotting this little expedition." She turned to face the men. "Now let's all be sensible about this." George Lane looked bewildered. "Martha, you don't understand. Isabel has been living the life she chooses," Martha interrupted firmly, "just as her mother would have wanted." At the mention of his late wife, George Lane faltered. "Eleanor wouldn't have wanted this. Not our daughter living among people who respect her," Martha suggested. "People who allow her to make her own choices? I think Eleanor would have approved entirely." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded, yellowed letter. "In fact, I know she would have, because she told me so." George Lane stared at the letter. "What is that?" "A letter your wife wrote before she died," Martha explained. "She asked me to give it to Isabel when she was old enough to understand. I think that time is now." She handed the letter to Isabel, who took it with trembling hands. The handwriting on the outside was unfamiliar, yet somehow known. Her mother's hand writing her name. "Read it," Martha encouraged. "Read it aloud." With shaking fingers, Isabel unfolded the letter and began to read. "My dearest Isabel, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you have reached an age where you must make your own path in the world. I write this knowing that your father, in his grief and pride, may try to choose that path for you. He loves you, but he does not always understand that love means letting go. Before I married your father, I lived a different life. I traveled with my family through the Western Territories. We met many peoples, learned many ways of living. It was during this time that I discovered a truth. Happiness comes not from wealth or position, but from freedom. The freedom to choose your own. Destiny to love whom you will, to follow your heart's calling. I chose your father because I loved him, despite my family's objections. It was my choice, freely made. This is what I wish for you. Not a life decided by others, but one you claim for yourself. Martha will help you if you need her. She has been my dearest friend and confidant. Remember always that I love you, and that wherever you go, whatever you choose, my spirit walks beside you. Your loving mother, Eleanor. Silence fell as Isabel finished reading. Tears streamed down her face, but they were tears of recognition, of connection with the mother she had lost so young. She looked up to see her father's face transformed by grief and memory. Father. George Lane seemed suddenly older, more vulnerable. She never told me she felt that way, he said quietly. About freedom, about choices. She tried to, Martha said gently. But after her family disowned her for marrying you, you became determined that Isabel would have the security and position Eleanor had given up. You couldn't see that you were making the same mistake her parents had made. George looked at his daughter, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in years. You look like her, he said, standing there so certain. She had that same look when she told her father she was marrying me no matter what he said. Isabel took a step toward him. I'm not rejecting you, father. I'm just choosing my own path. As mother did. Harold Blackwell had been watching this exchange with growing impatience. Now he stepped forward, his face twisted with anger. This is all very touching, he sneered, but it doesn't change the fact that we had a deal, Lane. I paid good money for your daughter's hand, and I expect you to deliver. George Lane turned to look at the man he had chosen for his daughter. As if seeing him clearly for the first time, his expression changed from confusion to disgust. The deal is off, Blackwell, he said firmly. My daughter is not for sale. Blackwell's face flushed dark with rage. You can't do that. We have a contract. A contract I'll be happy to pay off, George replied, straightening to his full height. But you will never come near my daughter. Again. For a moment it seemed Blackwell might explode with fury. His hand moved toward his gun, but Martha stepped between him and George. Think carefully, Mr. Blackwell, she warned. There are witnesses here. Many witnesses. The standoff lasted several tense seconds before Blackwell finally backed down, spitting on the ground again before turning to his horse. You'll regret this, Lane, he threatened as he mounted. Both of you will. I don't think so, George replied calmly. Go home, Blackwell. There's nothing for you here. With a final glare of hatred, Blackwell wheeled his horse around and rode back down the trail, his men following reluctantly behind. When they were gone, George Lane turned back to his daughter. Isabel, I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, father, she replied. Just try to understand my choice. He looked past her to Kaelin, who had remained silently supportive throughout the confrontation. You're the man who saved her from the rattlesnake? Kaelin nodded. Yes, sir, and you love my daughter. With all that I am, Kaelin answered without hesitation. George Lane sighed deeply. Your mother would say that's all that matters. He hesitated, then added, Perhaps she was right. It wasn't acceptance, not fully, but it was a beginning. In the days that followed, an uneasy peace was established. George Lane agreed to stay in the valley for a short time to see the life his daughter had chosen. He was uncomfortable at first, out of place among people so different from his social circle. But gradually, as he watched Isabel move confidently through her new world, as he saw the respect and love she had found there, something in him began to soften. She is happy here, he admitted to Martha one evening, as they watched Isabel and Kaelin help with the community meal. Happier than I've seen her since Eleanor died. Yes, she is, Martha agreed. She has found her spirit path, as Kaelin would say. On the day of his departure, George Lane surprised everyone by approaching Swift Fox. The two men, so different in appearance and background, regarded each other solemnly. I ask that you watch over my daughter, George said formally. She is precious to me, even when I have not shown it well. Swift Fox nodded. She is precious to us as well. She brings new strength to our people. George turned to Kaelin next. I cannot say I understand this choice, he said honestly, but I see that you honor and respect my daughter. That is, more than I can say for the man I would have given her to. It was as close to a blessing as he could manage, and Kaelin accepted it with grace. Thank you, sir, I will protect her with my life. Finally, George embraced his daughter. Your mother would be proud of you, he whispered, much prouder than she ever was of me. Isabel held him tightly. Come back to visit us, she urged. Get to know Kaelin, get to know this place. It could be part of your life too. He pulled back, a sad smile on his face. Perhaps someday. As they watched her father ride away, Isabel felt a complex mix of emotions, sadness at the distance that remained between them, hope that it might someday be bridged, and profound relief that she was free to live the life she had chosen. Will he come back, do you think? She asked Martha, who had decided to stay in the valley, having found an unexpected welcome among the elder women. Give him time, Martha advised. He has much to think about, much to remember about the man he used to be before grief changed him. That evening, Kaelin took Isabel to a special place high on the mountainside, a natural platform of rock that overlooked the entire valley. The setting sun bathed everything in golden light, making the world seem magical and new. I have something for you, he said, taking her hands in his, a gift to mark our journey. From a pouch at his belt, he produced two small objects, carved wooden bands, each bearing the image of an entwined snake that matched the token she wore around her neck. In the tradition of my people, he explained, these represent our bond, not ownership but partnership, two spirits choosing to walk the same path. Tears filled Isabel's eyes as she understood. Wedding rings. Yes, he said, slipping one of the bands onto her finger. If you will have me as husband, as I will have you as wife. She placed the second band on his finger in answer, words unnecessary between them. As the sun set behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the valley that had become their home, Isabel thought about the strange path that had brought her here. A desperate escape, a rattlesnake's bite, a stranger's hands pulling her from the edge of death. The bite that bound us, she murmured, touching the scar on her leg. Kaelin smiled, understanding. The spirits work in mysterious ways. They stood together on the mountainside, watching darkness fall and stars emerge in the vast sky above. Behind them lay the past, Thornwood Manor, Harold Blackwell, the cage her life had once been. Before them stretched the future, uncertain, challenging, but theirs to shape together. And between them, binding them together, was the love that had begun with a snake's warning and a healer's touch. A love as wild and enduring as the desert itself, and as sheltering as the mountain valley they now called home. In the darkness, Kaelin's fingers entwined with hers, the wooden bands on their fingers touching. You are mine, he whispered, echoing the words he had spoken when they first met. And I am yours. In every way that matters, Isabel answered, completing their promise. And somewhere in the night wind that swept across the mountains, the spirits that had guided their path seemed to whisper back, this is how it was meant to be. The end.